Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little. Gary Hotmail from my poker home game that I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Jonathan Little. Also, you can sign up to play the home game completely for free. I give away prizes each week at jonathanlittlepoker.com/homegame. He's in the home game every week, and he said he had a few problems, so I told him to email me in, and I would answer him. But I've been typing all morning, and I don't feel like typing, so let's make a video instead. Gary, I believe, plays small stakes games, is working hard to study at poker, has watched a bunch of poker training videos, and just got Poker Tracker 4. I personally use Hold'em Manager. You can download, or you can get a link to download that at jonathanlittlepoker.com/resources. If you buy it there, I get a little bit of a kickback, so that would be nice. But those programs are certainly very useful, and I suggest everyone use one of the two. But let's go through Gary's leaks, and we will discuss them. So number one huge leak is 3-betting. Quite surprisingly for you, maybe. But you're okay at 3-betting for value in your low buy-in games, and maybe that's all you need, so you rarely bluff. Well, that's quite possibly could be true. You don't really know which hands or in which positions to 3-bet, or against who, but you can't learn from books. Don't know why. Okay, maybe half the chapter at most you can read. But then actually putting what you've learned from the book onto the felt is very difficult. Whereas in a video format, you can learn some. Well, here we are in a video format. You're not so bad at 3-bet bluffing all in, you feel. Well, most likely what's happening is you are 3-betting primarily for value versus most players. So maybe with hands like these, right? It's not so hard to 3-bet with your best hands. That's what most people do. That's what most people know how to do, etc. In the small stakes games, I actually think it's fine to 3-bet a somewhat linear range versus most weak players who are going to be calling your 3-bet with a lot of hands that you dominate. As we move to the higher stakes games, you'll see that a lot of people will start 4-betting much more often. And when they start 4-betting more often, having a hand like Queen Jack suited in your 3-betting range doesn't really do you any good. So against players who are going to call your 3-bet a lot and then check fold very frequently, I think it's fine to 3-bet primarily for value. As your opponents get better and they're going to start 4-betting you some, you don't really want to be 3-betting hands that you can't withstand a 4-bet with. So you want to 3-bet your best hands that you can easily get all in with, maybe something like this, and then some hands that are not quite good enough to call with. So let's say, for example, a middle position player raises you and you're looking at 3-betting. Can you get it all in with ace-queen suited? That should be your first question. If you can't, take it out of the 3-betting range and put it in your calling range. Can you get it all in with pocket tens? Maybe you can, maybe you can't, depending on your opponent. But now you want to look at the hands that you want to call with. That is what is important. So what hands do you want to call with in this scenario? Say middle position raises, you're playing, I don't know, kind of deep. Let's say 50 big blinds deep. And you want to call with some hands like these. So maybe you call with these hands. Now you want to look at the hands that are not quite good enough to call with. Maybe these go in the calling range, maybe they don't. Who knows? So now you want to look at the hands that are on the cusp of this range. Whatever this range is. And this range can vary. Sometimes you don't want to call very often at all. Sometimes you want to call with a lot of hands. Sometimes you may not want to call with very many hands at all, which will put hands like ace-jack offsuit and king-queen offsuit into your 3-bet bluffing range because they have blockers. But anyway, so if this is your calling range, hands you want to be 3-betting include some ace-x suiteds, maybe king-9, queen-9, jack-9, 10-8, 9-7, 7-6, 6-5 suiteds, then maybe something like queen-jack, king-jack, and ace-10. You don't have to 3-bet those every time, but you can. Alternatively, say like early position raises and you want to be 3-betting with your nut hand still. Like say you're in the cutoff. So you want to be 3-betting your nut hands. Maybe you want to call ace-queen, king-queen, and ace-jack. Maybe you don't want these in the calling range. Maybe you don't want these in the calling range. So now, perhaps hands like ace-9, king-10, queen-10 suited become 3-bets. Maybe 10-9 suited becomes a 3-bet as bluffs, assuming you want to be polarized. Again, this is when your opponent's going to be 4-betting you or folding. You typically do not want to take a hand that's good enough to call and turn it into a 3-bet with the intention of folding. So really that's the gist of it. I'm not going to say that's all there is to it, but that's the gist of it, to where you want to figure out if you want to be 3-betting for value because you're not going to get 4-bet very often. And when you do get 4-bets, like say we are 3-betting linearly, like I just described, say you're 3-betting these hands for value. If you're 3-betting these for value and you get 4-bets, you can then easily fold out like all of these because you know the guy's never bluffing you, right? He's going to call you a lot. When he calls you, you're ahead. And when he 4-bets, you just know he has an incredibly premium hand. All right. Tip number 2, or thing number 2, calling all ins. Relies on knowing what they are pushing with. Well, yeah, putting them on a range you find very difficult, even though you now have Poker Tracker 4. You can do the math thanks to you. Well, I'm glad to help. So it's just their range that you're unsure about. You feel you play tight, so you always want to put them on a tight range, so you're rarely calling. You've been trying to work out a spreadsheet, and you're 3/4 the way done. You could take a look and see if it's reasonable. Well, I don't really know anything about the spreadsheets, but like you said, it does go back to trying to figure out people's hand ranges. And if you are tight, just naturally, let's say you play tightly, you are going to find out that you assume most people are also tight, which is not necessarily true. But say you're playing at a game and you have 20 big blinds, and say you min raise the button, and say the small blind goes all in. Small blind's playing, a very tight strategy, like 10/8 pre-flop. So playing only 8% of his hands, and his 3-bet's like 6%. He probably still knows he needs to be jamming a lot because, again, these stats are for all stack sizes. But most people in this spot who are somewhat tight are going to be shoving something like this. Give or take a little bit. Maybe he's calling with a lot of hands. It's difficult to say, but it's going to be mostly a range like this. Maybe includes all ace X's, but something like this. So if this is the range, click apply, click OK. That brings it over here. And now you want to try to figure out which hands have whatever equity you need to have to break even. So you can actually, on Poker Strategies Equilab, you can go to Tools, Equity. No, that's not it. Tools, Hand Range Calculator. Is that it? Yeah, Hand Range Calculator. So let's say, based on the pot odds, you need to win 42% of the time. But let's say you actually want to win 45% of the time because you want to have some edge. Click Calculate, and it'll tell you which hands you can call off with versus that range, which is a pretty cool feature. This is Poker Strategy Equilab. You can get it completely for free. Just Google it. Let's say you think he's not shoving all the ace X's. Maybe he is back at this range. You can now analyze this. You can go to Equity Train, or I keep doing the wrong one. Hand Range Calculator, 45%, and now you see it's much tighter. This is because now he's not shoving with all the ace X's. So instead of being able to call like ace 8 offsuit, now you have to call ace jack offsuit. And that's difficult to know. And there really is no way of knowing that unless you are actively trying to put people on ranges and you're seeing if you're right or if you're wrong. Do not use the fact that you have Poker Tracker now as a reason to play a billion tables. That is not necessary. But just be aware that you have to think about which hands should be shoved in these spots. And as you get better, you'll find more spots where people should be shoving wider. And, by the same note, say you raise button and someone is just crazy in the small blind. He's playing like 45/37 with a 12% 3-bet, right? This guy's range could be wide open. So against this guy, you're not going to fold very much at all. So let's say he is shoving just a ridiculous range. Click Apply. Go over here to Hand Range Calculator again. Let's say you need the same 45%. And now you can see you can call with all sorts of garbage, right? Queen 10 offsuit, King 7 offsuit, Jack 9 suited, Queen 8 suited. I mean, this is a very wide range. And the reason you can call with this is because this guy's shoving all of this garbage. All right, Poker Tracker 4. There are many statistics and pop-ups you can see. You're used to 12 stats maximum, but there are literally pages, which is true. You're new, so you guess it will come with time. Yeah, definitely just stick with a somewhat simple heads-up display when you're new. I mean, whenever you're very new to heads-up display, just start with like 4 basic stats. I think I have something like 20 displayed on my heads-up display for full ring, no limit hold'em. I guess I'll try to run through them. Pre-flop raise, VPIP, 3-bet, fold to 3-bet, steal percentage, fold big blind to steal, 4-bet percentage, fold to 4-bet, then flop, turn, and river. We have flop continuation bet on those streets, fold to continuation bet on those streets, and check raise on those streets, or raise on those streets. So that's roughly what I have. And then the pop-ups can be beneficial. I will be the first to say I do not use the pop-ups as well as I should. I mean, very rarely am I actually going too deep into the pop-ups. That's usually because I'm 20 tabling when I'm playing online, and there's just not time for that. But I definitely think the pop-ups are beneficial. So you just have to learn to look for specific stats at specific times. And that takes work. You say, by the way, you've been studying really hard, and you mean really hard, but due to your poor memory, and a normal person works 10 hours, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot more to know about this game of poker. Yeah, I mean, poker is a big game. You're going to find that quite often you are not going to know the right answer. And there's always something more to learn. But yeah, practice with it and try to take your time when you're playing and always ask yourself, what do I need to be thinking about in this spot? And then if there's a stat for that, go find the stat. And maybe you just need to spend an hour looking through the pop-ups and trying to figure out where is the stat that is useful here. Or, you can review some of your hands. And while you're reviewing your hands, make a point to always stop in the middle of the hand and go find the pop-up stat that you need to find. And that will help you be able to find that stat in real time. All right, can't try to put your finger on it, but it's a bit hazy. Okay, in certain situation, when you're out of position, and it's, say, the third or middle pair on the flop return. Okay, you struggle to know the odds. You normally struggle, but not because you already have a pair. Let's give an example. Okay, someone raises. You call Jack 10 suited out of position. Flop comes Queen 10 4 rainbow, none of your suit. All right, they bet tiny. X pot is Y now. You have 5 outs to improve, but you already have second pair, so you could be ahead. Yes, this is all accurate. It's kind of when you're unsure, you always fold because you're very tight, which you guess is because you want to preserve your stack. You don't mean when you have 15 big blinds or under. Okay, so if you have a hand like Jack 10 on this board, I would definitely check call in this scenario. This is a great hand. You're going to beat a lot of your opponent's range, and you're going to be in fine shape. There's a program called Flopzilla that will be very helpful to you. You'll see that Jack 10 is in great shape versus any reasonable flop continuation betting range, especially if your opponent's checking with some bad queens and some tens, because then when your opponent bets, it's going to be a lot of draws, a lot of nut hands, and a lot of air. So this is a hand you definitely cannot check fold the flop. If you check call the flop, you should often check call the turn, and then you should often check fold the river. I'm not going to say that's the ideal line. Again, some people you should just easily call down. Again, some people you should easily fold on the turn. But this is where the heads-up display becomes very beneficial because, again, some people, you'll see that they continuation bet the turn almost never. So if they continuation bet the turn almost never, when they do continuation bet the turn, well, you have to be a little bit cautious. And let's say you have someone who continuation bets the turn every time and then almost never continuation bets the river. Well, against those guys, you can call the turn and then fold if they bet the river. Against people who just go bet, bet, bet almost every time, you can just easily call down. So it's pretty easy to play whenever you have those stats readily available to you because those are situations that come up somewhat often. And that's a good example of a spot where those stats are very relevant when you have a marginal made hand that you don't really know when you should be folding it or if you should be folding it. That's all for now. You don't want to confuse me, but as you can see, you have a lot of areas to improve. It's good that you recognize you have a lot of areas to improve. I think a lot of poker players think in their minds that I'm the best, I don't make mistakes, I'm great. And if you think that, you're not going to get any better because you think you already know it all. And if you're not beating the 100K buy-in tournaments, well, you still probably have something to learn. So it's good that you recognize this. And this is how you're going to get better. I mean, I know I have a lot to learn. I always work hard and study people who I think are better than me, and I try to get better, just like you're doing. So very good work on that. Let's see. You applied for staking twice, but really only wanted the coaching aspect of it, but your results and low volume are not good enough to be accepted. Well, you got to put in volume and get some results. That's really what that amounts to. If you have very good results over a low volume, a lot of staking sites will consider you. I know I work with Pocarr.com, P-O-C-A-R-R. Tell them I sent you if you go. And if you do have good results, they often don't necessarily demand a high amount of volume, but especially if you're playing low stakes, they are going to be somewhat picky because there are a lot of low stakes players who are looking for staking for the coaching, etc. Is there any videos or small books or anything that could help? Sorry, you could go on a lot further, but that's it. I bet you're sorry I asked to help you. No, I'm very happy to ask to help you. You're in my home game and you make it a lot of fun. So, books. Excelling at No Limit Hold'em is a great book that has a lot of chapters on various things like this. Alex Fitzgerald's chapter is about 50 pages long, and he goes pretty deep on a lot of these things you're discussing. So definitely check that out. Also, I just had a book come out called Bluffs, just B-L-U-F-F-S. You can check it out at jonathanlittlepoker.com/bluffs. And it's well, I guess it's not that short, but it has a lot of hand examples. And I think that would be good for you, given you don't necessarily like reading the material. You can read and then have a hand example to think over. And I've actually been reviewing a lot of the Global Poker League games on Twitch, and also I've been posting some on YouTube and on Float the Turn. And a lot of the bluffs I see the players making are very clearly laid out in bluffs. And given you are somewhat on the tighter side, I think that will be very beneficial for you. So check those out at jonathanlowepoker.com/bluffs. And, you can find the Global Poker League reviews in various places. But thanks for sending in the questions. And hopefully this was helpful. And I will see you in the home game.